beloved chosen one. This message meets you exactly where you are, not where you pretend to be. Not where others think you should be, but right in the quiet center of your real life. You have been carrying questions you do not voice. You have been strong for so long that people forgot you are human. Some days you move forward out of habit, not energy. Other days you wonder if obedience is still worth the cost. And yet, something in you refused to stop listening. Something in you kept walking, even when clarity never came. This first layer is for you, the one who stayed when leaving would have been easier. You often replay moments that almost broke you, near misses, sudden changes, conversations that shifted outcomes, decisions you made without knowing why, only sensing you must. At the time, you called it intuition. Later, you called it survival. But now, you are beginning to understand it was guidance. You were not just thinking your way through life. You were being escorted through it. Even when fear whispered, "You are alone," your feet kept moving. That is not normal endurance. That is chosen endurance. Now the second layer opens the spiritual layer, where heaven speaks more clearly than circumstances ever could. There is a reason you were preserved. There is a reason chaos paused around you while it swallowed others. There is a reason doors closed gently instead of slamming shut. Scripture does not hide this truth. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." This is not just history. This is pattern. Being set apart always comes with protection. When God appoints, heaven assigns. Angels do not wait for applause, they respond to calling. Long before you understood your purpose, heaven recognized your alignment. That is why you survived seasons that should have consumed you. That is why danger rerouted. That is why you were delayed, detoured, and sometimes isolated. Isolation was not punishment, it was preservation. God was keeping you from attachments that would dilute your calling. You were removed from certain circles not because you were unworthy, but because you were too valuable to be influenced by the wrong voices. Heaven trimmed your environment before it crowned your assignment. What felt like loneliness was actually divine focus, narrowing your vision so nothing would contaminate what God planted inside you. Every separation was surgical, not cruel. God knew exactly which connections would drain your oil, distort your discernment, or delay your obedience. So He allowed distance, He allowed silence, He allowed misunderstandings. Not to wound you, but to keep you intact for the weight of glory you are being prepared to carry. Now you are beginning to see it clearly. The clarity did not come when people stayed, it came when they left. The strength did not rise in crowds, it rose in solitude. That is how you know this was God. Only heaven can turn isolation into authority and loss into spiritual rank. And now the third layer rises, the crescendo, the truth that demands response. Angels were sent as you walked in His plan, not after you arrived, not once you felt ready. As you walked, step by trembling step, every act of obedience activated movement in the unseen. When you chose integrity over convenience, angels moved. When you walked away from what looked good but felt wrong, angels moved. When you obeyed quietly without witnesses, angels moved. This is why the enemy tried to exhaust you instead of destroy you. He knew he could not stop what heaven was escorting. So he tried to slow you, distract you, convince you that obedience was costing too much. But hear this clearly now, what you thought was resistance was actually confirmation. You were never fighting alone. You were never exposed. You were being guarded while being grown. Do not minimize what you have walked through. Do not downplay the weight you carried, or not everyone survives the training phase. Many turn back when comfort calls their name. You did not. Even when you complained, you stayed. Even when you doubted, you obeyed. That is why this message found you. This is not coincidence. This is divine timing. But there is urgency now. A gentle one, but real. You are approaching a threshold. Delay has been allowed, but retreat will cost clarity. Don't do it, no matter the price. Mercy has been patient, but obedience must follow conviction. This is not fear speaking, this is alignment calling you forward. Heaven is not angry with you. Heaven is ready to advance you. Chosen one. If you can feel this truth stirring, honor it. Support what is feeding your spirit like this message. Share it with someone who needs confirmation. And subscribe so you remain connected to what God is unfolding. And as a prophetic act, at the end of this moment, comment the number 77 below only once to declare that you are choosing obedience, not comfort. You have known what it feels like to be surrounded. Not surrounded by help, but by pressure. By threats you cannot reason with. By forces that seem louder, stronger, and more numerous than you. There were seasons when you woke up already tired, already bracing for impact, already expecting bad news. In those moments, fear tried to convince you that you were outmatched, that obedience had placed you in danger, that faith had made you vulnerable. This is where your story quietly mirrors an ancient one. There came a morning in the life of the prophet Elisha when danger was no longer distant or theoretical. The enemy had tracked him. An army was dispatched not to fight a nation, but to silence one man who carried divine sight. Under cover of darkness, horses and chariots surrounded the city. Steel encircled stone, power surrounded purpose. And when the servant of Elisha rose early and stepped outside, his heart collapsed at what his eyes reported. Everywhere he looked, there was no escape, no path forward, no visible protection, only overwhelming force. That is how fear speaks. It shows you numbers, angles, outcomes. It speaks in logic and probability. It tells you what is possible and what is not. The servant rushed back in panic, breathless, trembling, asking the question you have asked in your own way. What do we do now? What happens when obedience puts us face to face with annihilation? What happens when following God attracts attention we cannot handle? Elisha did not rush. He did not react. He did not even look outside again. His response was calm, almost unsettling in its confidence. He did not deny the threat, but he also did not agree with the servant's conclusion. Elisha knew something the servant could not yet see. He understood that visibility is not authority, that what surrounds you physically is not the full measure of reality. So Elisha prayed not for the enemy to leave, not for the army to disappear, but for vision to be activated. And in that moment, the unseen became visible. The veil lifted. The servant's eyes were opened, and suddenly the hills were alive, not with enemies, but with fire. Horses and chariots of fire, filling the landscape, stationed above and around them. Heaven had been there the entire time. The protection was not dispatched late. It had arrived before the threat ever moved. The ancient words recorded in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 6, verse 16, still echo today. Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. This is not metaphor. This is hierarchy. Heaven does not match darkness, it outnumbers it. One angel routed armies. One word collapsed walls. What surrounded Elisha was not symbolic encouragement. It was superior force. The servant's fear was not foolish, it was incomplete. He was interpreting reality with limited sight. Chosen one. This is where your life connects to this moment. There were times you thought you were exposed, times you believed you were outnumbered, times you felt foolish for obeying quietly while opposition gathered loudly. You looked around and saw rejection, resistance, financial pressure, relational strain, spiritual warfare, and you concluded that obedience had put you at risk. But like the servant, you were only seeing one layer of reality. You did not know what was positioned around you. You did not see the assignments activated when you prayed alone. You did not see the angels standing guard over decisions you made in tears. You did not hear the commands issued in the unseen when the enemy tried to advance. Heaven does not announce its presence, it reveals it when needed. The enemy's greatest strategy is not destruction, it is intimidation. If he can convince you that you are surrounded, he can paralyze your obedience. If he can make you believe you are alone, he can silence your authority. That is why fear always exaggerates numbers. But Elisha's calm reveals a higher truth. Being surrounded by heaven is normal for those aligned with God's purpose. Notice this: the army did not leave immediately. The situation did not vanish when the servant's eyes were opened. What changed was perception. Fear lost its grip because vision was restored. The enemy was still present, but no longer dominant. That is how spiritual authority works. You do not need the threat to disappear, you need clarity to rise. And then Elisha spoke again, and the enemy was struck with blindness. The very ones who came to overpower him lost their sight, while the servant who once trembled now stood in awareness. This is divine reversal. This is what happens when heaven intervenes on behalf of those who walk in alignment. God does not always remove opposition, sometimes he disarms it. You are not meant to fight what God has already surrounded. You are not meant to panic over what heaven has already outnumbered. Like Elisha, your role is not to react but to see, to trust that obedience positions you inside protection you cannot measure with natural eyes. This section is not about courage, it is about vision. When your eyes are opened, fear loses its authority. And when fear leaves, obedience becomes steady again. You were never as exposed as you thought. You were never as alone as it felt. The hills around your life are filled, even now. You have reached a stage where silence is no longer emptiness, it is strategy. Earlier seasons trained you to endure noise, opinions, and misunderstanding. This season is teaching you restraint. You are learning not to explain yourself to every voice, not to react to every provocation, not to spend strength proving what God has already sealed. This is unfamiliar terrain for you, because you were shaped in pressure. But now pressure is giving way to precision. There was a time when you needed signs to move forward. Now you are being asked to move with discernment. You no longer rush simply because something feels urgent. You pause, you listen, you weigh. This is not hesitation, it is maturity. Heaven does not hurry those it trusts with weight. And you are being trusted with more than you realize. In earlier chapters of your life, you survived by obedience under fire. In this chapter, you are being refined into authority. Authority does not shout. Authority does not chase validation. Authority stands still and lets resistance reveal itself. That is why certain conflicts have gone quiet. That is why some people stopped provoking you, not because the tension resolved, but because your posture changed. There is a subtle danger here, though. When intensity lowers, complacency tries to enter. When battles slow, distraction whispers. This is why discernment must sharpen now more than ever. The enemy is no longer trying to stop you with fear, he is trying to soften you with comfort. He wants you to mistake peace for completion. But rest is not the same as arrival. You are standing in a corridor season. Doors behind you have closed permanently. Doors ahead of you are not yet open, but you can sense them. This space is sacred. Many people rush through it and miss instruction. Others linger too long and lose momentum. You are being trained to walk through it alert, grounded, and obedient. This is where the ancient words spoken through wisdom itself become crucial. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. This verse is not gentle advice. It is a command of survival for the chosen. Guarding your heart does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means discerning what you allow to shape your inner world. What you repeatedly listen to will eventually instruct you. What you tolerate emotionally will eventually influence your decisions. You cannot afford spiritual leakage now. The enemy does not need access to your calling if he can access your emotions. He does not need to stop your progress if he can slow your clarity. That is why small compromises matter in this season. Why subtle discouragements must be confronted. Why unchecked nostalgia can become a trap. Looking back too long can make yesterday feel safer than tomorrow. But God is not calling you backward. He is calling you inward, deeper alignment, deeper listening, deeper trust. This is the phase where your inner life becomes more important than your visible results. Because what is about to be released through you will require internal order. Chaos inside will fracture authority outside. You may notice that fewer people understand you now. Your language has changed. Your tolerance has changed. Your priorities have shifted. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. When God begins to prepare someone for influence, He simplifies their focus, distractions fall away. Social noise loses appeal. You are not becoming distant, you are becoming deliberate. There will be moments when you feel the urge to explain your transformation. Resist it. Explanation is rarely needed when fruit arrives. And fruit is coming, not rushed fruit, not borrowed fruit, but fruit that carries weight and longevity. The kind that feeds others without draining you. This section of your journey is about stewardship of self, stewardship of attention, stewardship of obedience. You are learning that not every open door is permission, and not every closed door is rejection. Some doors close because you have outgrown the room. Some doors delay because timing protects impact. Chosen one, hear this carefully. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are being calibrated. Heaven is aligning details you cannot yet see. Conversations are being scheduled. Resistance is being repositioned. Resources are being prepared. And your responsibility right now is simple but demanding. Stay aligned. This is why discernment feels heavier than excitement in this season. Why obedience feels quieter than ambition. Why discipline matters more than inspiration. You are being prepared for consistency, not bursts. For longevity, not momentary applause. At this point, engagement matters not as ritual, but as declaration. If this resonates with your spirit, write a short phrase below, no more than 3 words. Type I stay aligned. This is not performance. This is positioning. By writing it, you are affirming that you choose clarity over chaos, obedience over impulse, alignment over distraction. Let the words remind you in days ahead what you chose in this moment. You are not wandering. You are walking carefully, deliberately, and watched over. You are not entering a louder season, you are entering a deeper one. What lies ahead will not be conquered by effort alone, nor unlocked by information. It will require inner breakthrough, not the kind that impresses people, but the kind that restructures you from the inside out. This is where many hesitate, because inner work feels invisible, slow, and uncomfortable. Yet this is exactly where awakening begins. For a long time, you learned how to survive externally. You learned how to endure pressure, adapt to environments, and keep going even when your heart was tired. But survival is not the same as alignment. And endurance, while noble, is not the final goal. God is now inviting you into participation, into conscious cooperation with what He is doing within you. The first breakthrough begins with awareness. You must start noticing what drains you versus what strengthens you. Pay attention to what steals your peace quietly. Certain conversations leave you restless. Certain memories pull you backward. Certain habits numb you instead of renewing you. These are not random. Your spirit is signaling what no longer belongs in the next phase. Awakening starts when you stop ignoring those signals. The second breakthrough requires stillness. Not silence as avoidance, but stillness as discipline. Set aside moments where you do not ask for answers, solutions, or outcomes. Simply sit with God without agenda. This retrains your inner posture. Many people only approach God when they want something. But intimacy grows when you learn to be present without demand. In stillness, you begin to recognize the difference between God's voice and your own anxiety. The third breakthrough comes through honest self-examination. Ask yourself questions you usually avoid. Where have you been obeying outwardly but resisting inwardly? Where have you delayed decisions you already know you must make? Where are you seeking confirmation instead of clarity? Write these answers down. Awakening accelerates when truth is named. What you bring into the light loses power to control you. This is where Scripture anchors the process. As Jesus Himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 41. Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. This verse is not condemnation, it is diagnosis. Your spirit is already aligned, though that is not the problem. The struggle you feel is not because you lack desire, faith, or calling. It is because your inner disciplines must now catch up with your spiritual willingness. God is not questioning your heart, He is strengthening your structure. Another practical awakening practice is intentional withdrawal. This does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means creating sacred boundaries. Limit unnecessary noise. Reduce consumption that overstimulates your emotions but starves your spirit. Choose what you allow into your mind as carefully as you choose what you allow into your body. Nourishment matters. Next, practice obedience in small to unannounced ways. Do the right thing when no one is watching. Keep commitments even when they inconvenience you. Speak truth gently where silence would be easier. These small acts realign your inner compass. Breakthrough is often hidden inside consistency. You are also being invited to release old internal agreements. Somewhere along the way, you accepted beliefs that no longer serve you. Beliefs like I must struggle to be worthy, or if I rest, I will lose momentum, or I am only valuable when producing. These are not from God. They were survival mechanisms. Thank them for carrying you, but do not bring them forward. Spiritual awakening is not dramatic all at once. It is cumulative. Each surrendered habit, each clarified boundary, each moment of obedience builds momentum. And then one day, you realize you are responding differently. Triggers lose their grip. Fear no longer dictates your choices. Peace becomes your default, not your reward. You may notice resistance increase internally as you do this work. Old patterns do not leave quietly. But do not interpret resistance as failure. Resistance means something is shifting. You are crossing from awareness into authority. This is also the stage where community matters, but selectively. Not everyone deserves access to your process. Share wisely. Protect what is forming. Some things must mature in private before they can withstand public exposure. Chosen one, if this message is serving you, support it in a simple, meaningful way. Like it so it reaches others walking this path. Share it with someone who needs inner clarity more than outer answers. Subscribe so you stay connected as this journey unfolds. These actions are not obligation, they are alignment with what is feeding your spirit. Remember, this awakening is not becoming someone new. It is returning to who you were before fear, pressure, and survival reshaped you. God is not rebuilding you from scratch. He is restoring you to original design. And what is coming next will require exactly that version of you, awake, grounded, and inwardly aligned. You are now face to face with a truth many never reach. Obedience has a cost, and the cost increases the closer you get to fulfillment. Earlier, obedience asked you to let go of obvious wrongs. Now it asks you to release things that are not sinful, not toxic, not clearly dangerous, but no longer aligned. This is the hardest level because it feels unreasonable to the mind. Why would God ask you to surrender what is not hurting you? Why would He touch what you finally stabilized? This is where many pause. Not because they stopped believing, but because obedience now feels personal. It touches comfort. It touches identity. It touches the version of you that learned how to cope. You are not being tested for faith, you are being tested for surrender. And surrender is always more expensive than belief. There are things you prayed for that God gave you for a season, not forever. Assignments expire, relationships shift, roles evolve. What once protected you may now limit you. What once sustained you may now distract you. This does not mean you misunderstood God then. It means He is leading you further now. The danger in this season is hesitation disguised as wisdom. You may say, "I'm waiting for confirmation," when clarity has already been given. You may say, "I'll move when the timing feels safer," when safety is not the promise, obedience is. Partial obedience feels reasonable, but it quietly delays momentum, and delay, when prolonged, becomes disobedience. This is where spiritual tension increases. You may feel unusually tired, restless, or emotionally heavy, not because you are doing too much, but because you are carrying what you were meant to release. The soul grows weary when it holds on to expired instructions. Your spirit knows it is time, even if your mind is still negotiating. This weariness is not physical burnout, it is spiritual friction. Your inner world is resisting delay because alignment is already decided. When the soul clings to what God has finished with, heaviness settles in. Fatigue becomes a signal, not of weakness, but of misalignment that can no longer be ignored. Negotiation feels reasonable in the mind, but it drains the spirit. The longer you delay release, the louder the tension grows. Peace will not return through rest alone, it returns through obedience. The moment you let go, strength follows. What exhausts you now is not effort, but postponement. Scripture does not soften this reality. As was spoken in the sacred texts of old in the book of Luke, chapter 9, verse 62, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God." This is not harshness, it is focus. Looking back fractures direction. You cannot move forward while measuring what you left behind. The cost of obedience is often paid in advance, before reward is visible. That is why faith is required, not to believe God can do it, but to trust Him enough to let go without proof. You may be tempted to romanticize the past in this season, to remember only the comfort, not the stagnation, to recall the familiarity, not the limitation. Be careful. Nostalgia is a subtle form of fear. It makes yesterday feel safer than tomorrow. But God does not anoint backward movement. Another cost of obedience is misunderstanding. Some people will not celebrate your growth because it confronts their comfort. When you change, it silently asks others why they have not. So they may label you distant, intense, or ungrateful. Let them. Obedience is not a popularity contest. Approval is expensive and you can no longer afford it. You may also notice that God is asking you to obey without explanation. No detailed roadmap, no reassurance of outcome, just the next step. This is intentional. Explanations can become crutches. God is strengthening your trust muscle. Where you are going, you will not always have time to understand before acting. This section of your journey is marked by sacred decisions made in private. No applause, no validation, just you, conviction, and God. These decisions will not feel dramatic in the moment, but they will echo for years. Futures pivot on quiet obedience. You might ask, what if I lose too much? But the better question is, what if I gain alignment? Alignment brings peace that comfort never could. Alignment attracts provision you cannot manipulate. Alignment positions you where heaven can fully support you. Yes, obedience will cost you, but disobedience costs more. It costs clarity. It costs momentum. It costs intimacy with God. And worst of all, it costs time. Time is the one thing you cannot recover. Chosen one. This is not pressure, it is preparation. God is not stripping you, He is lightening you, now removing what cannot go where you are headed. The weight you release now makes room for authority later. At this moment, engagement becomes a prophetic act. If you know this section is speaking directly to you, if you are standing at a decision point, comment the number 318 below. This number represents those who were trained, prepared, and ready before the battle was ever visible. By doing so, you are declaring that you choose obedience over hesitation, even when the cost is real. Do it once. Do it intentionally to let it mark the moment you decided not to look back. You are now standing in a phase where authority is no longer something you talk about. It is something you carry. Earlier seasons trained your endurance. Recent seasons demanded your surrender. This season requires embodiment. Who you are becoming must match what you are assigned to steward. Heaven does not rush this stage, because authority that forms too quickly fractures under pressure. You may notice that your reactions have slowed. Situations that once triggered urgency now meet restraint. Words that once demanded response now pass without ownership. This is not emotional numbness. It is discernment maturing. You are learning the difference between what deserves your energy and what only seeks your attention. That difference will protect your calling more than any visible gift. There is also a new seriousness settling into your spirit, not heaviness. But wait. You are aware now that influence is not glamorous. It is demanding. It requires internal order. You cannot afford unchecked motives or emotional shortcuts. Where you are going, misalignment does not just affect you, it affects those connected to you. This is why refinement intensifies before release. God is aligning your inner life with your outer assignment. What you say must match what you live. What you carry privately must support what you release publicly. This alignment is costly, because it exposes inconsistencies you once overlooked. But exposure is mercy when it leads to correction. You may feel moments of isolation again here, but it is different from before. Earlier isolation was protective. This isolation is preparatory. God is teaching you to operate without constant affirmation. Leaders who require reassurance become unstable under pressure. You are learning to stand approved without being applauded. In this phase, obedience becomes more nuanced. God is not always giving you clear instructions. Sometimes He is watching how you choose when multiple good options exist. This is how discernment is tested. Can you sense His preference, not just His permission? Can you choose alignment over advantage? These decisions shape your spiritual authority more than dramatic acts ever could. There will be moments when you feel the temptation to compromise quietly, not in obvious ways, but subtly, to soften truth to preserve peace, to delay obedience to maintain comfort, to tolerate misalignment because confrontation feels costly. This is where many lose ground. Authority erodes when conviction is negotiated. Scripture speaks directly into this stage. The ancient words recorded in the book of Romans chapter 12, verse 2 declare, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God." Transformation here is not emotional, it is mental. Your thinking must be renewed to sustain where you are headed. Old frameworks will not support new responsibility. You cannot reason like someone seeking survival when you are being positioned for stewardship. Renewal requires letting go of familiar thought patterns, even ones that once protected you. You are also learning that spiritual authority attracts attention, not all of it good. Resistance may reappear, but it will look different, less chaotic, more strategic. When the enemy realizes he cannot intimidate you, he attempts to distract you. When distraction fails, he tests your integrity. This is why vigilance matters now more than ever. You are not meant to fight everything that challenges you. Discernment tells you what to ignore, what to confront, and what to outgrow. Responding to everything drains strength. Authority chooses battles carefully. Silence can be more powerful than reaction when rooted in clarity. There is also a deepening compassion forming within you, not sentimentality but understanding. You see people more clearly now, their wounds, their patterns, their limitations. This insight is not given so you can judge, but so you can navigate wisely. Compassion without boundaries leads to burnout. Boundaries without compassion lead to hardness. God is balancing both in you. As this balance forms, you may notice a decrease in emotional highs and lows. Stability replaces intensity. This is not loss of passion, it is mastery of it. Fire contained within structure burns longer and brighter. God is not extinguishing your zeal. He is housing it properly. You may still question yourself at times. That is not weakness, it is humility. The difference now is that doubt no longer controls your decisions, and you acknowledge it, then move forward anyway. Courage is not absence of doubt. It is obedience in spite of it. This section is quieter, but it is critical. What is being built here will support everything that follows. You are learning to carry authority without ego, clarity without rigidity, compassion without compromise. Few reach this balance, fewer maintain it. But this is the standard of those entrusted with lasting impact. You are not being rushed forward. You are being anchored downward. Roots must deepen before branches expand. God is ensuring that when increase comes, you will not topple under its weight. Stay steady, stay discerning, stay aligned. What is forming now will speak for itself when the time comes. You have arrived at a turning point that cannot be undone, not because everything is finished, but because something has been sealed. You are no longer standing at the edge wondering if this path is real. You are standing inside it. Too much has aligned. Too much has been revealed. Too many confirmations have met you in moments when you were not even asking. This is not enthusiasm, this is recognition. There is a quiet confidence beginning to replace the old urgency. You no longer feel the need to rush ahead or prove yourself. You are learning how to stand. And standing, in the spiritual sense, is not passive. It is authority at rest. It is knowing who you are, where you are positioned, and who is backing you without having to announce it. Earlier, you needed reassurance that angels were near. Now you are beginning to move as if they are. That shift matters. Faith matures when you stop looking for signs and start walking in agreement. Heaven does not need you to feel powerful. It needs you to be aligned. Alignment creates consistency, and consistency creates impact. This is the stage where many are tempted to shrink to make themselves smaller to avoid attention, to avoid resistance, to avoid responsibility. But shrinking now would be disobedience. You are not being asked to be louder. You are being asked to be truer, to occupy the space God has already cleared for you, to speak when prompted, to act when convicted, to rest when instructed. There will still be challenges ahead, but they will be different, less chaotic, more targeted. You will notice that confusion decreases even when pressure increases. That is a sign of spiritual rank. When authority grows, battles become more precise. You are no longer fighting everything, you are discerning what actually matters. You may also sense a new kind of compassion forming in you. Not the kind that rescues people from consequences, but the kind that loves without losing discernment. This is important. Where you are going, empathy must walk hand in hand with wisdom. You cannot carry everyone with you, but you can walk without bitterness. This is where Scripture anchors your identity once more. The apostle reminds us in his letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 37, "In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." Notice the language in all these things, not after they end, not when life calms down. In the middle of pressure, uncertainty, and responsibility, authority is already present. You are not waiting to become victorious. You are learning how to move from a place of victory that was established long before this moment. Victory is not something you chase once conditions improve. It is something you operate from while conditions remain demanding. Pressure does not cancel authority, it reveals it. When responsibility increases and clarity remains, that is proof you are moving from a foundation already secured, not striving for one still uncertain. You are not empowered because circumstances cooperate. You are empowered because alignment holds. This is why instability around you no longer destabilizes you within. Authority does not wait for calm. It functions in tension. It moves forward while outcomes are still forming, grounded in what has already been settled. What changes now is posture. You stop asking whether you will overcome and begin discerning how to steward what has already been entrusted. Victory becomes perspective, not destination. You are learning to move with assurance before resolution appears because resolution is responding to you, not the other way around. Being more than a conqueror does not mean you win every visible battle. It means you are not defined by them. You are no longer shaped by what opposes you. You are shaped by who sent you. That distinction changes everything. As this season unfolds, you will notice doors opening that you did not knock on, conversations beginning without effort, opportunities aligning without manipulation. This is not luck. This is what happens when alignment meets timing. Heaven accelerates what obedience has prepared. Still, remain grounded. Do not confuse momentum with permission to abandon discipline. Stay rooted in the practices that carried you here: stillness, honesty, discernment. obedience in small things. Public impact is sustained by private faithfulness. And remember, this being chosen does not make you superior. It makes you responsible. You carry light not to elevate yourself, but to illuminate paths for others. Your life becomes a signpost, not a spotlight. And that is a holy assignment. If this journey has spoken to you, if these words have helped steady your steps, support the message in a simple, sincere way. Like it so it can reach others who are quietly searching. Share it with someone you trust who may need strength today. Subscribe so you remain connected as this path continues to unfold. These are not empty actions. They are ways of keeping the flow open. You are not finished, but you are ready. Ready to walk without fear. Ready to stand without apology. Ready to trust that what walks with you is greater than what stands against you. Before you move on, pause here, not to decide anything, not to resolve everything, but simply to notice what stayed with you. Not every word was meant to be remembered. Not every idea was meant to be carried forward. But something touched you. Something settled. Something resonated quietly beneath the surface. Hold on to that. This ending is not a conclusion, it is an opening. What you do next is yours. If these words brought clarity, strength, or peace, you are free to share them with someone who may need that same steadiness today. Not as instruction, not as pressure, just as a gift passed gently from one soul to another. And if some parts did not resonate, let them go without resistance. You do not have to carry everything for something to matter. Sometimes one sentence is enough. Sometimes one image. Sometimes one quiet knowing that you were seen. Keep only what touched you. Leave the rest behind. Growth does not always announce itself. Often it moves quietly, integrating slowly, reshaping you from the inside out. You may notice its effects later in a calmer response, a clearer decision, a steadier heart. That is enough. Transformation does not require drama to be real. There is no demand placed on you here, no obligation to agree, no pressure to act immediately. Just an invitation to remain attentive to yourself, to your inner compass, to what feels aligned rather than urgent. If this journey felt meaningful, you know what to do. And if it didn't, you still gained something clarity about what does and does not speak to you. Both are valuable. Walk forward gently. Carry only what strengthens you. And trust that whatever stirred within you will continue to unfold in its own time, without force.